So Sam, welcome to the next episode of Legal Dispatch. I know I've been hunting you down for a small period of time now. I'm really glad to finally kind of get you on the show and on the podcast. For those that don't know Sam was the co-founder of LawVu, which is an amazing matter management tool, which we'll kind of discuss a little bit in the legal tech space. And if you do want to have a chat to Sam, you can find him on LinkedIn, which is Sam Kidd with a double D at LinkedIn. So Sam, welcome.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here. Sorry I took so long to track down. I'm terrible at responding to emails at times. When inbox gets inundated, and I was like, okay, just keep putting it on the long finger all the time and trying to fit this in with travel. But conveniently,
no worries.
Being in New York puts me on a bit of time zone to chat to you.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, maybe just let's start with a really simple question. Tell us what you do, who you work for. Maybe even you can tell us a little bit how you started on that journey as well.
Because so LawVu is a legal workspace, so we look after the entirety of the workload for legal teams. I suppose the founding story to LawVu is I was with an online project management company kind of back in the day, based out of Ireland. When I sold out of that back to the other founders, got to experience the utter joy of dealing with lawyers. And so I went from this world of kind of like transparency and tasks and communication and to just having no idea what I was doing. And so in some ways it was just kind of a lack of education on my side. But then so I thought, lawyers are sort of like these mystical creatures that you're never quite sure how to kind of engage with them. So I was back in New Zealand. I was kind of thrown around an idea and I got introduced to my co-founder, Tim, who was already in the legal industry, but on the law firm side, helping the law firm to engage better with corporate clients. So we were introduced and he'd already kind of started on something. And then as we kind of dug in more and more, realized that in-house legal is kind of where there was a lot of pain. And also I think a lot of disruption in any industry is really driven by the client side of transaction, and in-house legal being probably the largest users of legal. And so we kind of approached a number of small teams in New Zealand in the kind of local government space, met with them. Their technology stack was, as you'd imagine, pretty small. It was basically Word and Excel and Outlook, like that was it. And when you spoke to them, it's like, do you have any issues? Like, no. And then they kind of highlighted what they did, which was about 1,000 steps of things to kind of engage and try to get reporting. And there was just no basic system for them to kind of actually rally around. Like you've had sales, like Salesforce, HR had their system, finance had their system, and legal was just nothing. And so we were helping these kind of local teams kind of, I suppose, enter the digital age. We built LawVu kind of from the ground up for corporate legal. We didn't really know what we were. We were kind of matter management and contract management and spend management, and we were all of the managements. And then we started trying to look offshore, because I think probably one of the most terrifying things when you start a company is if you can't find anyone that's doing something that you are, because if there's no competition, it's just a super shit idea, and you're solving a problem that no one actually kind of wants. But we kind of saw there was like those large incumbents at the top of the chain doing sort of like legal teams of 100 and 200. They kind of sat there. But this mid-market didn't really have anything. And then at that time, we also, through a bit of research, kind of discovered this role called legal operations that was really being spearheaded out of a lot of companies in the US. So boarded a few planes, went to a couple of conferences, and we're like, I actually think we're kind of at the forefront. We're tackling this from like a business perspective, as opposed to legal ops back then was really like going after like small areas. So in the US, it was really like, how does the corporation tackle and handle billing and the billing place for law firms? But no one was looking holistically as to how the function actually runs, how you communicate with each other. And so we always had a business lens kind of around the product. And at I suppose at a number of conferences, we were still a little bit weird. We're kind of like the weird kids in the corner where everyone's like,
Yeah.
you're doing all of these things. Like each one of these is a separate company. I was like, but as we start looking at it, it's like this is just all part of the same flow. It's part of the legal flow and engagement. It's been segregated into different companies. And so we end up entering an RFP with Telstra kind of back in the day. It was like 2018-ish. And that was a legal team of 200. So we beat out all the kind of large players in that space. That was, I suppose, a bit of an oh shit moment, because we were kind of like dealing with these small legal teams, and suddenly we had this gargantuan organization with 200. So we had to kind of grow up pretty quickly, become all the fun stuff that you don't want to do when you're a startup, become ISO certified, get SOC 1, SOC 2, all that sort of stuff. But it put us on the map. So if we could handle a team of 200, then we could handle a team of kind of 10 and 20. And you're also selling to a cohort of people that don't really like the whole startup MVP approach. And so, that's hard when you enter into the legal world. Everyone wants to know what's your customer base, who your other references, how long you've been around, how secure are you, how financially stable, all the things that it's really hard to provide when you're starting up. So, we forged good relationships with some people, and some folks took a chance on us.
That's with Mick.
Yeah, and PwC, having them as a strategic partner was almost like having a parent or someone vouch for you. It's like they think we're good. So there was a lot of forming relationships. Like we were basically 3 years from the time we started in 2014 of building product with almost no customers, but there was always a carrot dangling in front of us. Like there was always something we're kind of pushing towards. So that kind of kept us going. And then you kind of reach that point where you start to see this kind of trickle of customers. And then we were able to, we raised a couple of seed rounds and angel rounds through New Zealand. And then we had a Series A with Insight Partners, which is based here in New York. We simply raised a bit more capital. So to date, we've raised probably close to 50 million New Zealand dollars to kind of get us to where we are now.
Yeah, nice. I mean, we were talking a little bit before we started about kind of that quantum shift between startup, scale up, and then obviously starting to get to a bigger organization, and the different kind of mindsets, challenges, and cultural changes that you get in an organization. I'm always quite interested, like in the very, very beginning, was it bootstrapped in terms of it was self-funded and you started on your own, and in that beautiful area of New Zealand called the Bay of Plenty. Spent a bit of time there. I know it's a beautiful part, but did you feel a little bit isolated over there, and a little bit, I guess, coming from working with that Irish project management business, probably spending time across the other side of the pond, obviously I think sometimes, when you've got this idea in your head where, it feels like you're onto a hit song or something like that, but maybe no one's listening yet. What were those early days like?
Well, I think you probably hit on, because I've been based overseas for a long time, and last company was selling online globally, even though we're at the bottom of the world in New Zealand. I don't think we always thought of ourselves as global from day one. Whether I know a lot of New Zealand startups fall into the trap through angel investors, build a base in New Zealand and start small. And once you have that, then branch out. But we were just always on the mindset of we're building globally. And so I don't know if we ever felt like it was kind of hard to connect, because we were just online through LinkedIn. We're kind of connecting with people, we're going to conferences, it was always with the mindset of the bigger, better world outside of New Zealand. I think if we had just been focused purely on the New Zealand market, then it almost becomes harder when you start to look, okay, now how do we get offshore? Which is, it's a harder animal to kind of attack then at that stage.
Yeah. I know you travel a lot, what does an average day for Sam Kidd look like? From the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, what does it look like?
Yeah, so it varies. When I'm at home, it's up first in the morning, and I run up Pap Hills, or it used to be the Mount. So up at 5:30, and then out running, and then weights. So I'm sort of done just before 7 as the kids start to kind of wake up, and then kind of take part in the absolute shit show, which is the mornings with children, as everyone's getting ready for school and arguing and breakfast and things like that, and then out the door, and then into work. So HQ is only about sort of 20 minutes from where I live, and then the days vary. It kind of depends what stage I'm going through. So if we're raising capital, we can just be like just Zoom call after Zoom call after Zoom call, talking to folks, and we're constantly always talking to VCs. I think that's probably the mistake we made in the early days, is build, and when we're ready, we're like, okay, now we're going to go to market, and everyone's like, who the frick are you guys? We just sort of appeared out of nowhere. So we do a lot more work around keeping those communication lines open and kind of bringing people on the journey, even when we're not raising capital. So then when we go to do it, it's like they're kind of aware. So a lot of my day was doing that. In the early days, it was demoing. So I was basically just demoing the product the whole time, so which is sales. So I came from the sales side and was doing all the selling in the early days. Tim, co-founder, was on the product side, but then we would meet quite often and then kind of run through like the product initiatives and kind of what's happening and that as well. And so now I'd be catching up with the exec team as to kind of what's happening around hiring, what people are kind of doing on the product side. So it does become quite varied. And then you get into like conference season, where we're kind of in now towards the back end of the year. And so I get more into travel, where we're into road shows. So I was in Austin last week, where we're meeting with clients, meeting with VCs, having dinners. We're trying to bring the community together, and then straight into a conference with ACC. And then it's just, forget how punishing conferences can be as well, on my back and legs, just standing and just and just you're trying to bring the energy, and you're having repeat conversations the whole time. The nice thing is that the conversations have changed over the years, whether before people coming up to us and being like, what's the matter, man? Like, what is it that you guys do? Whether people like, I've been told to speak to you, and what we want now is what we're offering. So like, that's super refreshing. And you do get quite a lot of, I think, energy from those conferences as well, because you see people, how excited they are about kind of what we're doing, and also it's a chance to me to connect with the team as well, because we are fairly distributed. Even in New Zealand, we've got about 80 there, but we've got about 25, close to 30 in the US, and then a smaller number in the UK and Australia. So with that kind of hybrid remote workforce coming together for events and things like that, you get to connect with the team, which is always fun as well.
I'm always so interested that you're part of the 5 a.m. club, and do you continue that when you're on the road as well, or it's just not possible? I know you've been to the gym this morning, and now we're on a podcast. Like, do you try and keep those morning rituals together?
I think when you're traveling, just like being fit makes such a huge difference. It's almost easier when you first land, because time zone sometimes works in advantage. So I'll be like waking up at 5 and be like, oh, I'm easier with it today. I was up at 6 because I was just kind of an hour behind with things. But also when you're on the road, like, food is just heavier as well. And I think just to remain sharp, it kind of sets you up for the day. And getting fit sucks. Getting unfit is so much fun. And I love food. And so it's like, okay, if I want to keep eating what I want to keep eating, I'm just going to have to drag myself through the gym. But like, it's, for me, it's the kind of the mindfulness of it as well. Like, if I'm normally attacking like cross trainers in the morning, it gives me room and space to kind of think as well, because you can't look at your phone, you're not doing things, and you sort of think about what do I want to get through today as well. So it sort of wakes you up. It certainly helps a lot with jet lag as well.
I mean, aside from the fitness, are there any other kind of rituals or habits? You talked a bit about mindfulness, and I guess, like, even as a CEO, when you're starting to, sometimes it's quite hard to be a bit present, right? Like in terms of that, because you're always thinking about, what am I doing today? What's coming up, tomorrow? I've got to speak to this guy. I've got to nail this meeting this week. Is there any other kind of habits or rituals that you do aside from the fitness game, or what is that?
No, like, if I was to say I've got great balance, my wife would lie and say you're full of shit. Because it's truly hard to have real balance. I think that comes down to the fact that you need to enjoy what you do. That I suppose the only ritual. The only thing is you just got to surround yourself with great people and people that you want to be with all the time. Because I spend a huge amount of time with LawVu team, like more than I do with my family. And so when you think about that, it's like just make sure you wrap good people around you, and then like also just the friends and Emma and like she probably keeps me grounded and in shape on some things. So like she's the one that would probably help pull me along into stop working or come out of this and sort of gets me a bit of a social life at home. So like you need a good partner in crime. Like this is it's a team sport. Building a company, and it's like at times it's hugely fun, but it's freaking difficult and certainly draining at times. So it sort of makes a huge difference when you've got that help and support at home.
No, I know. I mean, you guys are coming up to 10 years next year, which is a huge milestone. Congratulations. I mean, two questions. So are you, there's obviously, like you were talking about before, even if you're not raising money or are going for, a portion of sale or anything like that, that there's different focuses typically for businesses, where in terms of like, focus on growth and EBITDA at all costs when you're kind of, getting ready to fatten up that turkey for sale or for a raise or something like that, versus there's a time for stop, reflect, build a beautiful system, and kind of spend more and invest more on kind of like probably quality and kind of functionality. Are you guys quite strategic, or are you as a CEO strategic in that way, or is it not kind of you kind of just going along with the ride? Like where are you on the balance of strategic versus that kind of make it up as you go?
It's a really good question, and I think it changes. Like I said, super strategic. My VP of product would probably listen to this podcast and be like, absolute bollocks, because you see something. And so yes, we have the strategy sessions where we sit down, we plan out what the year is going to be. But then, like if we take this year for example, like AI just suddenly started to really kind of become something towards the end of last year. We've done a lot of our strategic planning. We kind of had our roadmap kind of baked as to, okay, these are the things we're going to work on. And then like, I remember sitting down with Dan, I was like, we need an answer for AI, and we need it now, because like we need to jump on this. And so some of it becomes reactive that way. It's like, okay, we're going to have to adjust our plan. This is what our strategy is. What things have we set up for the year which are non-negotiables, and what things are we just going to dig a little bit deeper to kind of readjust now, because you can't just blindly set up something for 12 months and just work through and think that you're going to do that. So so I suppose the answer is it's a little bit of both. And do you have the team and the capacity to allow you to kind of make those, I say pivots, or just those adjustments as you kind of progress through the year? Like we quite often talk about things in LawVu years, like what we get done in a year feels probably like about 2 or 3 at times, because there's just always something, and you're never, I don't think you're ever happy with where you're at. Like we're always like, if we like once we get to here, once we get to this, once we do, like we just need this. We need an extra quarter in the year would be super handy. If we could have 5 quarters, make quite a difference, because you just always feel like you're chasing your tail, and you're just never quite done what you kind of want to do. And I think there's a nice kind of cadence to that as well, where it keeps you motivated and keeps you kind of pushing. The downside to that, and something that we're trying to get better at here, is actually, it's like I said, pausing for a second, reflecting, and looking back on kind of what you've achieved. And we always do that at the end of the year, and we try to do that at times when we have big releases, just to like a pause for a second and celebrating what we've all achieved, because you're on this treadmill the whole time. And the sort of folks that we have in the company, the high achievers, they always want to be doing something, but you do need to stop and pat yourself on the back and be like, look what we've actually got out and what we've done, and the customer brought on. We should all be immensely proud. And we will stop for a second, like, that's cool, and then let's go again. And it kind of gives you the energy to keep kind of pushing at a pace which is pretty relentless. Some people enjoy it, and we have other people join, and they're like, okay, this is just too fast for me, and there's like they're not into it. But most of the folks that we have, they enjoy enjoy the chaos, the kind of planned chaos, and enjoy this kind of scrappy stage of kind of building a company that's kind of in that growth stage.
Yeah. What would you say is the most challenging part of your role? Let's see.
People and communication. I think communication with a global company is making sure that everyone is on the same page. Is harder than I thought it would have been. Like I talk a lot. You're always chatting to people, but you kind of naturally end up kind of not in silos in some ways. And so like, how do we have better like cross-functional communication across the company? Like we've got countries, time zones, everything, and then people in different pockets. So like it just, I think that's probably the hardest aspect, is to make sure that we're all rallying around the same thing. And because we've got
the same
song. And we've got such epic people in LawVu, and like I'm not a micromanager. The reason we get people is because they can hit the ground, they do their thing, and like I'm just trying to look at how do I unblock things for them and let them run a million miles an hour at what it is that they want to do, but then they can go super deep. And so they're trying to work out how they communicate that back up. So I just think the comms across a company, like we're 130 people at the stage, and every kind of phase, like what as we kind of set up now, we know when we kind of bring on probably another 50 over a couple of years, you break your own systems and processes. It's like just as you start to feel, oh cool, we know what we're doing, got shit sorted, it breaks, and you're like, and then you get that sorted, and then it breaks again. Like I was talking with one of our customers at his last conference, and just the scale that I've gone through, they IPO'd, and just their scale of growth and bringing people on. So the same thing, just like breaks, and they just you fix it, breaks again, just you fix it, breaks again. So I can't. Yeah, that's probably the hardest part.
Yeah, I definitely would empathize, and like we're similar size. I think we're 220 now. Before the Concilio merger, now I think just in consulting we're about 500 or something like that. So it does get increasingly difficult to keep everybody happy, still have that meaningful communication with your team, let them know that you care, and kind of making, and I guess like aligning on that same hymn song. So really good point. Communication and people. What about kind of changing it up a little bit? Let's say you were going to give a TED talk and it was something in a completely different area of expertise to kind of this legal tech space or the work that you do. What would you do a talk on, and why? I know you've got a bunch of interesting hobbies, and we follow some of that on your LinkedIn posts and things like that. But what would your TED talk be if it wasn't about legal tech?
So this is where it comes down to where I start to feel like my life is terrible balance because so much of it goes into LawVu, and I start to look at what are my hobbies. My only other real hobby is eating. And so I've got a pizza oven. Like I love cooking, so like that's probably cooking's probably my mindful. Like to your other question, it's my mindfulness kind of escape. Like I like coming home and preparing dinner. Like in the weekends, like we like having all our friends over. I put the pizza oven on, but normally it's doing steak or some sort of other slow cooked meat or salads and things, and so. Like my talk would probably be on entertaining, having people over. So it's kind of weird that even though I'm surrounded by people the whole time, when I get to the weekend, I actually like more people over, and we spend a lot of time entertaining with our friends and having them over and cooking and kind of hanging out. So that'd be, or my TED talk would be on terrible work-life balance, and kind of what to do. But that's I suppose back to my first point. Like you got to enjoy what you do, because like just a huge amount of your life goes into building a company, that it is really hard, I think, to have just that perfect balance. And I think people put a huge amount of pressure on themselves, like through social media, like you need to have all this mindfulness time, and you need to do this, and you need to journal, and you need to do this, and like that also piles just a shit ton of pressure on people. Like am I being the best human because you go online and it's like other people are just exponentially better than me? Like they're reading more of the journey, they've done freaking yoga at whatever time, and I was like, I've just been working away and then went home. had dinner and a whiskey and chilled out. I was like, oh, maybe I should have been reading more. And so I just feel like there's like people just put an insane amount of pressure on themselves to be these superhumans, and at times you just grinding away. Like, we can't be ridiculously amazing all the time.
I 100% agree, and I do think that I mean, to be honest, I spend a lot of my time speaking to leaders and of businesses, and some and nearly all are incredibly successful humans, and I think what you're talking about resonates in terms of that strive and not imposter syndrome, but more just kind of fear that you're not being the best human. And I think it's also, I mean, even speaking to Electra last week, we're kind of talking a little bit about work-life balance, and that feeling of, if you've got a young family as well, that to be honest, that is the most magical time for me as a human, is just be spending time with my kids and being present there. And but then to kind of fit in all these other extra meditation sessions, yoga sessions, listening to this podcast, saying that, well, we're doing one now, but I often wonder how real scenarios these are, or if it's kind of that almost that fake Instagram life that we're kind of buying into in terms of that.
Yeah, and like I've got 3 kids, and they range from 9 to 14. So like I'm on the road a lot, so like getting home and actually kind of being with them. Like COVID, as horrible as it was, actually probably hit for me at a good time, because I'm on the road probably about 3 months of the year with a young family, and then I was stuck at home for 2 years not traveling, and that was a super blessing. I also think weirdly for New Zealand companies it was a net positive, because it shrunk the world. And also Zooming, doing Teams. So I always joke we were kind of Zooming before it was cool, but we were different. So we were doing remote selling and remote onboarding, and everyone's like, and then that was just normalized. And even though we've got all our frontline staff and a customer facing in the US, they're still not having to roll out to companies that are doing everything online. So you're just more productive that way, and you can get through more with a smaller workforce, because you're not spending hours on days traveling to a client to do an onboarding.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think there's COVID was a big shift, I think, in terms of business, and it was there was that kind of, there's still obviously what you can gain a lot from face-to-face conversations, and there's a time and place for it, but a lot of kind of the doing and the back end and kind of the implementation work for the businesses that we're in can definitely be done remotely. And for us, even at Psych, and I'm sure you probably would agree, if you give up that notion of having to have an office in some location, it allows you to attract the best talent in the world, no matter where they are. So that's kind of the philosophy we've had at Psych, and we've got some great people, as I know you do in your team. Well, what about if you think of the word successful? Who is the first person that comes to mind, and why?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Like, I suppose it varies. Growing up for me, like, 'cause I often think of like entrepreneurship, and I was only on a flight recently watching the Richard Branson story, and you kind of like, he was the only entrepreneur at one stage, kind of, and so I never thought of myself as that, because it's just like, to be an entrepreneur was just so kind of like out there. You had to be unbelievably successful, and I was just basically trying to stay alive and feed myself, and just kind of creating businesses. So like it's been kind of strange to see this whole shift to this kind of startup culture and stuff like that, which was sort of came a little bit after I started. Like, I've always worked for myself. In some ways I've never worked for another company. So yeah, like I'm not quite sure. Successful, kind of, it varies depending on kind of what I'm doing at some stage, like, or what I'm listening to or reading. Like, audiobooks for me was a big unlock, and then like listening to the Nike story about Phil Knight and stuff, and you just look at his whole journey and you're like, oh, so good. It's like
so
such
good,
an inspirational book. And so you look at something like that and being like, that just seems like ultimate success, because the stage that he went through, and it kind of fascinated me. And he didn't set out to build a brand. It was just, he was just so into running, and then so into just providing the best product to the customer he could. And then Nike was created because his supplier basically cut him out. It's like, okay, well, now I need my own brand. And just the speed that they kind of came around, and created this gargantuan company that is just everyone just knows it. And so like that for me is total success. But I think he'd probably look back and be there's things that you could do better. So I think from the outside, everyone sees other areas of success, and then like I know we have that when people look at us and be like, oh, you guys have been successful, but like you always feel like we're treading water, and if we get that, you're never quite happy with where you're at as well. So everything's always looks better and brighter on the outside.
Yeah, I often wonder on the Nike story if I'd love to hear from the ASICS side in terms of that conversation, where they completely cut him off, and he was like, all right, I'm going to do it myself. I mean, it's a little bit similar. I don't know if you've read the one, but Burton, the guy, the snowboarding company who. Very, very similar, selling the boards from the back of a car in the beginning, and it similar to kind of the Nike story where he was creating the running spikes and things like that, like really inspirational stories. And I think those are quite inspiring as an entrepreneur. Like, where did that seed come from? Like, because it's not obviously a well-trodden path in the Bay of Plenty to kind of be launching a global business. I know there's many successful startups in New Zealand, but probably if you were to compare to your mates back home, you'd probably, I don't know, you tell me, are you an outlier, or is there a startup bug coming out of the Bay of Plenty?
It's certainly I'm an outlier with my friends and the kind of group that I hang around with. The Bay of Plenty is becoming a little bit more kind of startup kind of focused. For me, there's always so when I moved back to New Zealand, I've been back just on 10 years. I started mentoring at Startup Weekends, which is kind of an organization where you kind of bring people together. There's a pitch night on a Friday, and then everyone rallies around and tries to kind of create, it goes through the process of kind of creating a startup. So I sort of mentored at those for about 2 to kind of 3 years. And so you start to see this kind of startup culture kind of come through New Zealand. The only part of it that worries me at times is there's a little bit of, I know some of it, just like I want to be part of a startup, and the highlights, I know if I look at my LinkedIn profile, you see the highlights, but you don't see how utterly grinding and painfully boring most of my day is. And I think that's to be able to kind of build a company, you have to be able to do the absolute and uttermost mind-numbing shit constantly, because 90% of your life is quite boring, and then you get those 10% kind of highlights, and that's kind of what keeps you going. And I think when you go to a lot of these sort of, when you talk to people, everyone wants excitement the whole time, and so people start and it's exciting, and then it's not, and then they all kind of drop off as well. But I think we're starting to see probably a stronger group of people kind of pull through and realizing what it's like to actually kind of build a company. And so there's some pretty good companies starting to come out of the Bay of Plenty, and actually out of New Zealand as well. Now, when you look at kind of the Rocket Labs, the Auroras, the Halters, there's really strong global tech companies that are starting to be built, and that creates an ecosystem. People start to kind of learn from each other. You look at Xero and Vend and all these sorts of folks, and then they start to kind of to say into other companies. And we've got a number of folks that were at Xero, so you've got people that have been there and done that, and they bring that culture and that knowledge and that expertise in. And then what we're building at LawVu, we've had a few people that leave and they've gone off into other startups, and so they start to kind of grow that ecosystem. And I think that really helps raise the tide a little bit. And so I think for New Zealand, it means that there's a good strong tech culture kind of starting to kind of form there. And out of the Bay of Plenty, it's not a bad spot to live and grow a global company from. There's worse places to be,
absolutely.
but it's just open people's minds that you can build a global company from NZ.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Zero definitely probably paved the way in terms of that. Uh, and one thing that has always fascinated, because I have spent some time working in Wellington and places like that. So I know kind of New Zealand quite well. Like in many respects, it's a beautiful little area where you can actually experiment on, because it's quite a small country, really. Same with
Yeah,
Australia almost, in terms of the multiple industries, which allows for a lot of cross collaboration that you probably might not get in a place like America or Europe and things like that, because everyone's almost got vested interest to help each other out to grow across industries, and probably even within industries. So it's quite an interesting kind of melting pot. I think we see it here in Europe, probably in Eastern Europe, where you've got countries like Estonia, Lithuania, like all those kind of places where and Finland as well, that have amazing kind of like technology kind of hubs that are all fostering and growing with each other, that
yeah,
you kind of don't quite get in the London but Berlin kind of startup culture. And same here. I'm in Portugal. We've got Farfetch, which is Portugal's first unicorn, which is like fostering a whole lot of kind of startup culture.
yeah.
Well, what about I'm really interested to know the conversation that you either had in your head or with your wife, that was the night before, of like, holy shit, I'm gonna go and do this, and this is what I'm jumping off the cliff. Can you remember that conversation that you had, either even with Tim or like, we just like, right, let's go do it. And how did that conversation go?
Yeah, I don't think we ever had the conversation. Like, as I said, I've just always been doing it.
Yeah.
So my wife is well aware of kind of how I am, and it just kind of I think if you actually really thought about what you're going to do, you'd be like, no, nah, not a fucking hope. There's no way I'm going to put myself through this, because it's that you kind of start, like, as in I'd obviously moved to New Zealand. I'd set up a co-working space because I just saw a kind of niche there, and it was a great way of having colleagues when I was working in the last company. And then when I started to go into something, you just kind of step into it to see what's sort of there. I think if you actually sat down and think, okay, I'm going to commit 10 years of my life or more to building this, and this is going to be hard. So, like, I think, part of building a company is you have those moments where you think this could be something amazing. But if I actually deeply thought about how long, like, I was 5 years with no pay,
Yeah.
building it. And if I started out, it'd be like, right, I'm going to 5 years no pay, I'm going to invest all this sort of money in. I'd be like, on paper, this doesn't make any freaking sense. And I
Yeah.
wouldn't do it. So, like, I've never sat down and actually kind of thought, this is what I'm going to do. Like, people quite often ask, oh, what are you going to do afterwards? And when you're in the middle, it's like, I'd never fucking do this again. Like, this is mental. Like, this is so freaking hard, building a
Yeah.
company. I also know that I can't sit still for 2 minutes anyway. So if I was sitting on the beach doing nothing, after about 10 minutes, I'd be like, right, it's oh, look at that shop over there. I bet you could do something. Like, it's just, I just know that's the way I'm kind of wired,
Yeah.
to kind of get out and do stuff. And so it's just I've always been like that. And I think part of building a company in some ways is the ability to look ahead, but also not, because, as I said, like, most of your day to day is so grinding that you just need to focus on the stuff in front of you. If you get so far looking to the future, you actually almost get blinded, because there's so much to do, and it's like, what do I tackle next? I've got all these things, and so you just tackle one thing at a time, and then you look back and like, I've actually done quite a bit here. So that's, for me, is probably how I kind of compartmentalize to actually do this, is to not overthink it too much,
Yeah.
and actually think
Yeah.
about what's in front of me, and just tackle with the day to day.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just kind of building on that, what advice would you give to your younger self? Like, Sam just leaving uni, you know, 22, 23. What advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Like, I did film and television in uni, and here I am, trying to tell lawyers how to be lawyers and run things. So, like, it's quite a segue into this. And I think of, like, all the the companies and stuff that's kind of set up along the way. It sort of prepares you for it. And actually, I probably quite often think more about what I tell my kids when they kind of go to do stuff in their 20s, because like my first business was a video production company. My second was a 24-hour online gaming cafe when sort of into, so it was like an actual retail shop that we had for sort of 5 years.
Yeah.
But I wonder if my son or daughter set up a shop like that, would I be like, where is this going? Like where, like what's the future of this? Because I now know all the things that I kind of like what I do and what can have the most impact and success. But I learned a huge amount from that. That was my first time employing people. It was first time having payroll, first time like kind of budgeting and set up a company and doing work with accountants. So was it a waste of my time because it wasn't a company I could kind of scale further? But I learned a huge amount from that. So like, yeah, I don't know. I think quite often, am I going to be terrible giving advice to my kids around what to do, because I'm going to want them to skip all the steps that I did just to get to the moving and growing and scaling faster part. So I'm not quite sure if I'm good at giving advice to them. So I'm not quite sure if I would have been any good giving advice to my younger self, other than just keep working hard.
Yeah, I think, I agree with you a little bit. Like, I probably had a very similar journey. My very first job was as a Japanese tour guide for penguins on a little island in Australia. And here I am in the legal tech business as well for the last kind of 15 years also. Like, so that spectrum from, and, I've been bicycle courier, call center, like, that huge, 35 jobs or something like that when I counted it up like a couple of months ago. But each of those ones kind of give you just a little bit of learning, like one tells you maybe how to deal with people in stressful situations, how to operate, even when you're tired, and how to kind of conserve energy, how to communicate physically, verbally, when you don't speak the language, or how to present things to people from different cultures and stuff like that. And I think, that you're right, like, there's almost like no wrong path, and actually many wherever you end up in life, and like, I'd be interested to kind of hear from you kind of where you think on kind of like phases of life. But lately I've been reading about this thing where 25 years is adolescence, still finding your way. 25 to 50 years about kind of creating your family, your house, your career. The next stage, like, which is more about giving back, and then finally kind of if we get there, that enlightenment kind of stage when we're talking about Hinduism and stuff like that. Like, where do you think you are in your life and your phases of life, and have you ever kind of thought about that?
Yeah, sort of. Some of it's terrifying, and I think you're right the way you kind of talk about the different stages, and that's also, I think, people pile a mass amount of pressure on themselves. I'm running out of time. But like, if I look at how long I've actually been working, like really, like as a whole of my life, like I've got the time to do this all again, like literally the whole thing again and then some. Like, even I'm like looking at my dad, who's just about to turn 70, and I run with him every morning. He's been 15 years in his last job. The job he's in now is the longest he's been in one company, 15 years, and he started that when he was in his 50s, and you sort of think he's towards the end of his career, and he's done almost more in that company than I've done through my entire sort of working career. And so it starts to give you a little bit of perspective as to how long you actually have to work somewhere, and in some ways that can take some of the pressure off. Like, you see like younger, like people in their mid-20s starting to panic. Like 25, I remember 25 being a terrifying like year or age, because when you're younger, you go through school, and then I don't know why you're either kind of sold the story that when you're sort of in your mid-20s, you kind of got your life together, got a house, you kind of got a car, you're probably like married and settling. You think about, how do I slow down now? And then you get to 25 and you still feel like you're like 18, and it's a little bit of a shit. I have nothing together. And you see people hit that age, and same when they hit 30 as well. Like when I look back at where I was when I was 30, I was nowhere, really, because you're still kind of learning. And also people finish education later. and then everyone's like, oh god, I need to have kids and get married, and I don't own a house, and so like there's all these things that kind of people build up in their mind as to where they should be at each age and stage, and things happen quite fast as well. So like you don't slowly build into things. Quite often it's like from 0 to 100 quite quickly. Like if you're either not working or you're working, sort of thing. So people sort of panic if they don't have the job of their dreams. Like, oh no, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, and then they go back, and it's like you've never been away. Like you're just instantly back into it at 100%. You don't kind of slowly eke your way back into something. So how much you can achieve in a year is huge, and you can shift the dial massively. But again, like we pile massive amounts of pressure onto ourselves as to where we should be at each stage of our lives.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely a lot of pressure. You touched before a little bit how audiobooks changed the game for you, and it has done for me too. Like, what are the top 2 books you would gift on or recommend that you've either read recently or most gifted books that you think everyone should read, or even top 3?
Yeah, audiobooks just so game changing. Like I'm slightly dyslexic, and then also too impatient to read, and so there's so many things that I kind of wanted to get into. When I discovered audiobooks, just open up my world. Like Shoe Dog, which we'd already mentioned, is probably right up there. I really enjoyed the Bob Iger book, as the Disney CEO, and just his kind of journey as well. The Tipping Point, was it from Malcolm, all of Malcolm Gladwell's books.
Malcolm Gladwell's books, yeah.
Plus, he's got such a nice voice to listen to. Like I listen to all the books I listen to. I probably listen to 1.5 to 2. So like it feels fast, like it's in double speed. But once you get into it, you can kind of like your body kind of sinks. The only one I've listened to at normal speed was what is his name? Green Light. All right.
Yeah, with the actor Matthew McConaughey.
Matthew McConaughey, yeah, because his voice is so iconic. That's the only one I actually had to slow down and just have it at the right pace. So like everything I read is biographies. So I'm just fascinated with people's lives and kind of what they've done. And as I said, I did film and television in college, and so it's not super applicable to what I do now. And so it's almost like you can get this master's degree in business by hearing from the people that have kind of been there and done that. So like I used to do a huge amount of podcasts on capital raising, startups, and kind of went through those for years. And so you end up with all the lingo, you kind of understand how things work. Like how much you can learn from podcasts and stuff is just unbelievable. Like all this ability just to get this education there and hear from the people that have been there and done that. And then I sort of transferred across to books when I kind of had done with podcasts for a while, and then I'll flip back to kind of podcasts and that. But I agree. There's a lot of knowledge you can gain from that. All good books. I've read all of them except for the Disney one, so it's a good one for me. I'm going to go and get that. The last one is the hard thing about hard things.
The hard thing about hard things. I have to check that one out too.
So good, so good.
Just a bit of a fun one. What is the best thing you've purchased in the last 6 months?
Best thing I've purchased. My life's so dull. Best thing I purchased was actually a holiday. Went to Hawaii with the kids. It was quite spur of the moment. We had a really brutal summer in New Zealand. It was just raining the whole time, and I think that was kind of one of those things where it's like to buy experiences, and it was a chance where it was 10 days away. There's never a good time when you're building a company to take a holiday, and that was like it was almost spur of the moment where we're like, let's just do this, and just banged everything onto a credit card, and we went over there for 10 days, and a little bit of a kind of a ability to kind of switch off, and that's the joy. I got such a good team that can enable you to I dip into emails, but try not to get stuck into Slack and things like that, and just get that time away with the family before I kind of head into the travel season. So I think that was without a doubt the best purchase, and you're just trying to build those memories, and I think especially when I look at my kids, and someone said it to me a while ago that like, I've got 4 summers probably left with my son before he leaves, and you start thinking, shit, 4 summers, when you actually think about it like that, it's terrifying. And so it's like, how do we kind of like have those moments, or kind of create those memories and things. So yeah, that was probably it.
Yeah, 100%. I've never thought about it in that respect. My eldest is 10 now, so I've probably only got 8 summers left max. Like where we're really together as a family. So it's good to be reminded of that. Really, really good one. What about one final one? I'm sure I've really enjoyed the conversation. I probably could talk for 2 or 3 hours on about all this stuff. But one final one, Sam. What is your theme song? I know I did give you a bit of a heads up before.
So hard.
Yeah, it is bloody hard.
So I was trying to think what, and I suppose if I had a dream by Elvis Presley. Only because I tried to attempt that during my wife's karaoke during her birthday, sort of had slightly kind of pulled it off. So that's probably the one that stands at the moment. Like, I think it probably sums up kind of how I feel. If you have a dream, you can actually bring people together, achieve what you want to achieve.
Yeah, a really great tune with a great message. I agree. I'm kind of a firm believer in manifestations, and if you start to kind of dream it, think it, talk about it, you can actually make it happen. I've seen it. I see it a lot with Alistair, our CEO. So I think it's a great tune. Good choice. From my side, Sam, great talk. Thank you so much for making the time. Really thoroughly enjoyed it, and thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you.